All right, guys, I need some help. We got this conference coming up later on in the summer, and I have no idea what I'm gonna wear. I'm thinking like probably, try and look a little professional, maybe put on some dress clothes. But with that being said, I don't like what kind of accessories do you guys rock with your dress clothes? Like, I haven't worn dress clothes in so long. Like I kind of just dress like a hobo for the most part, just because I don't care usually. But now I'm thinking, hey, maybe I got a reason to care a little bit. I don't really get out much. What do you guys think? I need some help.
Why don't you check out cufflinks.com? It's kind of like the men's accessories marketplace.
Okay, so like what can I get on there then?
Prince, you can get anything on there. Cufflinks, tie bars, pocket squares, ties, socks, all the good stuff.
Yeah, they have like 58 different brands, 13 different licenses, Star Wars, Marvel, all the more traditional looks, all the major sports leagues.
Even probably have hockey.
All right, well, like I like that. Maybe I get myself some NHL stuff, but then again, I don't know if I want to out myself that easily on who I cheer for. It usually ends up being a case to make fun of me.
Yeah, we got to be looking our best though, and I've held this stuff and felt this stuff, and it's really quality stuff. I have some of the stuff myself. I have some lapel pins, cufflinks that I use pretty much every day when I go to work.
See, I don't even own any cufflinks. So I'm thinking maybe I treat myself,
Yeah, what's cool about it too is not only do they have like the more creative ones, like their upcoming Game of Thrones line, but all the more traditional ones, just standard colors and styles. It's a really good variety of dress accessories for any kind of guy.
Beauty. All right. Well, yeah, I appreciate the suggestion, fellas.
Prince, all you got to do is go check out cufflinks.com.
Yeah, and when you're there, be sure to use the promo code CRYPTO20 for 20% off your first order.
Well, I like discounts, so I'll be doing that.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event.
Let's go.
Round one. Fight. Thank you for tuning in to the Crypto Street Podcast. Here are your hosts, Killer Whale, Prince, and Crypto Dale.
And remember to tip your waitress.
What's up, everybody? Crypto Dale coming to you from sunny Iowa. No more snow on the ground. That's a goddamn pleasure. I'm not in Prince's shoes and have snow on the ground 24/7, 365. So thanks for tuning in, Crypto Street Podcasts, excuse me. I'm joined by the grizzly bear himself.
Hey.
He ranged from northern Canada.
Up in the wilderness, hiding out in the mountains.
Live to Prince for weather.
Yeah, wasn't bad today. Woke up, it was kind of windy. I had to shut my windows. No snow on the ground though, so all is good. All is good.
What else is good in the life of Prince? How's that puppy doing?
Oh, he's a little shithead, but he's adorable. He's a troublemaker.
That's great.
So
that's great. Just like his
he was
his
like
keeper, right?
Yeah, he was swinging off the window drapes last night, so it was quite the scene.
That's hilarious.
Like with his mouth?
Now,
yeah, he was just swinging away. Yeah,
wow.
He'd run up and he'd like jump at him. He'd get a hold of it and he'd be swinging across the room almost, and then he'd fall off. It was just ridiculous.
Ladies and gentlemen, I need your full attention. We are joined by none other than California Dreamer, Killer Whale himself.
Oh, that's quite the intro, bro. I don't know if I can live up to that.
I was mixing it up. I always introduce you first, so I thought, you know what?
It kind of threw me around.
I know it did, because I know how you are so OCD.
Yeah.
If things don't go according to plan, you're just like, I saw you.
Everything's falling
like, apart. Your head like,
Shit, dude. That's how I've been with these uploads lately. I'm getting all like anal about this upload problem we're having. I'm sure by the time anybody hears this, we'll have it fixed, hopefully. But
hopefully, fuck.
Yeah.
Podbean's being a little bitch.
They sure are. Hopefully they don't ban us after this if they hear this or something. But
love you, Podbean.
Thank you, Podbean.
I've kind of been calling them out on Twitter, so I think damage might be already done if they're going to get angry. But oh well.
It's funny. I just can't believe how we've gotten the run around since Friday.
Yeah.
On stuff's not working, and they just don't seem to care.
I was talking with Prince too. It's like we're like one of their more downloaded podcasts too. Like we're not like the very top, but we're certainly up there. Not to be bragging, but you'd think we'd get some kind of priority with this maintenance or something.
Shout out. So hey, Killer, you see what Prince has on his dome? It is people listening. It is not a toque.
A beautiful Crypto Street hat.
Look
Yeah.
at that.
Make sure you get over, check it out, cryptostreetstore.com. God damn it. I can't remember the promotional code.
Launch
Killer, help me
party.
out. Launch party. Enter launch party to get 10% off of all of anything that has our logo on it, the Crypto Street Podcast logo. Wonderful guest tonight. We're pleased that we're joined by Crypto Ethan on Twitter, Ethan Ackerman, one of the sharpest young people, in my opinion, that I follow. I know these guys mirror what I say. Before we started recording, Ethan, you were talking pretty high level to me, and I was just like, man, I'm just going to shut my mouth this episode because Ethan is way smarter than I am. So welcome, man. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. You flatter me.
So, yeah, no problem. Let's just kind of give the viewers or listeners a background on how you got into crypto, maybe a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Ethan Ackerman. I go by @CryptoEthan on Twitter. I've been trading cryptocurrencies and a few other markets for about 4 years now. I started off when I was a sophomore in high school. I sort of stumbled upon cryptocurrencies almost by accident. I think a friend of mine posted a joke about it on Facebook, and sort of got me interested in it. I first found out about Dogecoin just because that was, the joke of the day. And that was, when the big pump was going on. That was when Wolong was pumping Dogecoin. So that was in the news. So that was sort of how I found out about cryptocurrencies and cryptocurrency trading. And the more research I did, the more I was fascinated with the idea. And that was sort of what initially drew me into the market was, the potential of cryptocurrency, not only just to revolutionize the way we do money, but also sort of the global economy as a whole. And so I started reading more about cryptocurrencies. I don't know how, but I sort of stumbled into the Twitter sphere. I think it was early 2014. Honestly, the best thing that could have happened to me. I've met some incredible people on Twitter, and I've learned so much about just trading, tech in general, and just could not be more grateful to have stumbled across cryptocurrencies and the space that I have.
So what's that like being a sophomore in high school, and really dabbling into something so foreign at the time, and so I mean, kudos to you, because me as a sophomore, I was thinking about two things, and making money wasn't one of them.
I mean, it was sort of an accident that I stumbled upon cryptocurrencies. This was back in 2014, so nobody really knew what they were. So I was just sort of doing my own thing. My friends sort of knew I was into cryptocurrencies. I was that crypto guy. But, no one else was really into it at the time. So I guess that's why I turned to Twitter, because it was nice to actually be able to interact with people on this topic.
Sure.
And I think there was definitely a steep learning curve. Like you said, getting into it kind of young, it was kind of cool because I got exposure to it early. So going into college, I knew that economics was what I wanted to do because I really enjoyed trading, and actually that was how I found out I wanted to study economics. Just by the way, I'm here at Colgate University. I'm a sophomore here right now, and I'm a double major in math and economics. But I came into here yes, it keeps me busy.
That's a schedule right there.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
But that was actually how I first found out I wanted to major in economics. Because up until I think it was my senior year of high school, I was thinking about going to school for engineering just because it was something I was sort of interested in. I wasn't really great at it, but it was something I was interested in. But then it was actually my physics teacher that suggested to me that I major in economics, which was, sort of a slight at the same time as sort of a compliment. So I'm glad he suggested that because, I'm really happy with where I am. I love what I'm studying. So, and it's cool to actually start to integrate what I do with crypto into, what I learned here at school in the classroom.
Yeah. Do you have any teachers who talk about it all in your classes?
Not really. It's something that will get mentioned on occasion, just as part of a more general lecture. But no, we haven't really had any in-class discussions. I know a lot of the large universities, I think MIT and Stanford now have cryptocurrency courses.
Berkeley
Colgate's
does too.
Yeah, Berkeley does too. That's right. Colgate's a much smaller school. We only have like 3,000 students, all undergrad, just about all undergrad. So we have sort of like a smaller selection of courses, but it's interesting how like because I'm focusing on monetary policy like within my study of economics. So it's interesting sort of how that tangentially sort of ties into like what I do with cryptocurrencies and like the more general thinking I do about it.
Like pretty directly, I would say, even monetary policy and crypto.
I'd say so. I think there's a lot more to cryptocurrency besides like just the monetary policy, especially with like all these tokens that are out now, like utility tokens and equity tokens, so on and so forth. But I think, especially with dealing with things like the block size debate, I think that's very, very monetary policy related. And so it is kind of interesting how where I learned in the classroom relates to that.
So this is something I'm always curious about. Being in crypto for so long, relative to how long crypto's been kind of within the public eye, how have you seen it change? Or how is it different than from when you first got started in it?
I guess looking at the market first, it's definitely a much larger market now. It grew so quickly. Like honestly, back in 2014, I would never have predicted that something like 2017 would happen. Like I was always incredibly bullish on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general, but like $20,000 per coin was like never in my mind really.
Thought he was crazy.
I think it was Tim Draper that called it back in 2014, and I think everyone kind of doubted him at the time. Now reading Crow, but like yeah. I guess the market's there's a lot more people in the market. I'd say it's maturing, but not fully mature. Of course, not like a traditional market. But I think, back in 2014, that was truly like the Wild West of cryptocurrency trading. Exchanges were, very, very sketchy. Like, you would never see an exchange like Bittrex back in like 2014. I mean, Bittrex was around back in 2014, but like the level with which they're like, very serious about like, their customers' funds and like regulatory, like, compliance, like you wouldn't have seen that from like, let's say MintPal.
Well, yeah, back then it was just sign up with a username and a password, and like
exactly
a password. That was it.
Well, it wasn't long ago that people were convinced Poloniex was exit scamming, like a year ago. Like when Poloniex was having all that overloaded volume from all the altcoin action, and Poloniex would go down for like 20 minutes during like a major Ripple run or something. Like people were convinced like, this is it. This is the exit scam. Like fast forward a year and Poloniex gets bought by Circle. And it's like, well, they're kind of legit.
Yeah.
Like what?
I mean, but you had a lot of exchanges like go down like that. Like Cryptscene, I think it was 2015, went down like that. MintPal went down after it was bought. Crypto Rush was before my time, but like still, like I had read about it. So like, I mean, like the oldest like still existing like altcoin exchange I can think of is I think right now it's probably Bittrex, and that was in like maybe mid-late 2014 was when like people started to migrate to Bittrex. That was when I first heard about it. But yeah, like the skepticism, I mean, in the end, it might not have been true, but like it, is sort of founded in, what actually happened. So
for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like we've been pretty blessed. We haven't, touch wood, had a major exchange mishap happen yet. It's like, I just keep thinking, and, you see some guys post about it too. It's like, I wonder when it's going to happen. And you're like, because you talk about too, like back then, it's like, that was pretty normal. Like it was like, you had to, that was part of your risk assessment was, what exchange you're using, how much money is on the exchange, because there is a chance it's going to go belly up or, lose everything. We've been pretty lucky so far. Yeah,
we definitely have. I mean, I think that's definitely no guarantee that like it's going to stay that way. Like, especially with like the smaller cap exchanges, right? Like, I don't want to label any out, but like if you know what I'm talking about, sort of. Like the smaller exchanges, like you definitely sort of want to be careful with how much money you keep on there. Definitely don't treat it like an ordinary wallet. Like if you're going to use a wallet, like if you're not dealing with a ton of money, you can use an online wallet. But like obviously, like a hard wallet is safest, like a Trezor, a Nano. But like, I mean, I think it's definitely the space is definitely safer than it was back in 2014. But like the risk still exists, and it is cryptocurrency, so anything can happen. Even with like something like let's say Coinbase, like something could still happen.
Yeah, it's still nascent technology. It's still new, even to the people who are running the big, really big shows like Coinbase, Poloniex, Bittrex. All the big players. Accidents do happen too. Even despite their best protections and best efforts, exchanges can obviously still get hacked. I think one of the big things why these exchanges have probably gotten their act together a little bit better than they had in the past is all of these exchanges are under a lot of government scrutiny.
Yeah.
I mean, the government is looking at these exchanges really closely lately. And I think that's where people think a lot of government intervention is going to come in, is with the exchanges. So these people have to be on their best behavior. And the primary thing that entities like the SEC are concerned with is investor protection, right? So that's got to be really the primary thing that these exchanges are looking at. You seem to have very much an interest in fiscal policy, monetary policy, government interaction within the markets. How do you see that playing out from a regulation standpoint going forward? Just regulation in crypto, how it might change it, what might come first in that regard?
Okay. Yeah. I think it's still hard to predict at the point. At least in the US, the current administration is taking a hands-off approach to financial markets in general, sort of a dialing back on some of the regulations. But I think, regardless of that, cryptocurrency is such a big space now. It grew so quickly in 2017 and it made so many headlines that I think, regulators, they can't really turn a blind eye anymore. I think, back in, God, I don't know when this was, but I think it was maybe January or something, the SEC took down 2 fraudulent ICOs. And I think more recently they arrested the devs of Centra. That was big. Oh, God. Oh, God, what a joke.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, yeah. I think it's kind of hard to see what's going to happen. I think definitely with US-based exchanges, you're definitely going to see them. They're already being forced, but they're going to be, really forced to do full KYC, AML, know your very strong know your customer law or provisions. They're going to have to put a lot of that into place. We're not going to see, at least in the US-based exchanges, we're not going to see little bucket shops open up anymore. They might for short periods of time, but it's all very fluid still, but it's going to come with time. And the SEC so far has been very, very slow to act. So I think you're not going to see a tidal wave of regulation, flood in at any one point. I think it would probably be best too if they, ease into it gradually. They don't want to shock the markets. There's been talk recently about classifying Ethereum as a security. I don't see why they would do that. There's no security aspect of it. It's a utility cryptocurrency. There's no promise for future rewards or anything like that.
Well, the thing is too, it's what would they even do enforcement action wise? I've seen some people speculate. They're oh, they're going to do a rollback of Ethereum. Are you fucking crazy? How would that even work? You're going to reverse every transaction that's happened? It's completely unfeasible. It's ridiculous to think about.
Yeah.
And so I don't even. I guess they could fine the Ethereum Foundation or something, but with how rich that organization is, I think that would be a drop in the bucket, even if they did that. And then, they run into the thing where the government does seem very cognizant of stifling innovation, at least in the US. It doesn't really, like you said, Ethan, it hasn't really come down with an iron fist on crypto, even though they've had plenty of opportunity to at this point. And so I think they're very wary of that. And so I think, the concerns of them going down on Ethereum are way overblown by some people. Or maybe they're not overblown, and I'm just taking a select example that was overblown. But I think they're being very cautious, I saw an interesting tweet actually by Eric Voorhees today. He was quoting the SEC commissioner who said today, "If you want to know what our markets would look like with no securities regulation, the answer is in the ICO market." And then Voorhees goes, "So, fast growing and full of cutting edge innovation where adults are free to make the decisions with their own money? Sounds awful." I kind of botched the end of that, but it kind of has a point, and I basically agree with that, where there is a sort of natural selection within the economy and within markets. And if people are going to make mistakes, that's kind of on them to a large degree.
I think you have the issue though of incomplete information, especially with things like tokens, and especially equity like tokens, where they're operating, in the essence that they're going to pay a portion of revenue or something to token holders. They're under no legal obligation to do that. It's not legally like equity. So there's no like stockholders' rights or anything like that. So what you're buying is basically just a promise. So I think there's definitely a role for the regulators to play like with equity tokens. And I mean, like I've taken a more bearish stance on a lot of tokens, and I'd say most people. I think blockchains and decentralization, it's very, very useful for certain things, but like if there's not a whole lot of trust required for like an application, it's probably more efficient to just do it with like a company's centralized servers. You don't need a blockchain for it. It's inefficient. So a lot of applications, I think the whole put on a blockchain thing is kind of a fad, and I think we're going to see it sort of fade over time. I think we're already seeing it fade, but I think sort of like you said, like there's a lot of innovation going on in this space, and I think the flood of money in 2017 definitely fueled a lot of that. I mean, we'll see how much of the innovation lasts. I mean, I don't want to take too much of a hit on like tokens, but like, I mean, we'll see how much of it lasts. But at the end of the day, like some of the tokens that were created, in 2017, some of these ICOs are going to lead to really, really cool projects. I think we're seeing, some sort of come through, already.
Do you have any you're especially interested in that you don't mind talking about, or is that you normally keep that close to the vest? I'm gonna push you a little bit on it.
Yeah. I mean, I look more like technically at a lot of cryptocurrencies, so I think there's not really one. I guess I would say that is really piquing my interest recently. I think like the variety of tokens that exist on the market is a good sign. And I think over time, in the long run, like the market will decide which of them are valuable. I think a lot of them are going to self-implode too. That's what we saw in like the fall of 2017. We saw a lot of scams, or 2014. We saw a lot of scams implode, just under the weight of public scrutiny, so on and so forth. And I think I don't want to say that that's what we're going to see, but I think it's going to become apparent with time, which projects are actually not only have substance to them, but also have a good idea. Because it's one thing, if the developers put a lot of work into it, but it's also another thing, you have to have a good idea to stand on it first.
And that's an important aspect of any market to me. Like those lesser projects, there's going to be a time where they do get left behind and they implode. And that's kind of, it's just a natural part of the market.
Well, it's what makes markets competitive, is these companies and these projects are working against each other and some have to fail. It's sort of like survival of the fittest. It's Darwinism within securities. Or not securities necessarily. Sorry, everybody. But
some might appear
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. What is up, Crypto Street? Are you trying to look fly for that special lady in your life or look your sharpest for an upcoming job interview? Cufflinks.com is your go-to spot for everything men's accessories. They have 58 different brands, including Hook & Albert, Ox & Bull, and their own proprietary brand, Cufflinks Inc. They have 13 different licenses, including Game of Thrones, Star Wars, Marvel, DC Comics, and all the major sports leagues, so you can really customize your look. They have everything from cufflinks, tie bars, clips, socks, ties, bracelets, accessory bags, and much more. Encourage you to elevate your look when you get dressed in the morning. It's really going to give you that confidence to kill whatever you have coming up. Visit cufflinks.com and enter the promo code CRYPTO20 for 20% off your first order. I'm curious to hear, Ethan, your thoughts on the market right now. We have a lot of rumblings about alt season being just starting or maybe ending. Or I mean, having been in the market since 2014, I think when was the last sort of real alt season, or not the last one. The last one was like, I think spring of 2017. But
that was the prolonged one.
In terms of like how the market feels, I guess, to you and how you see assets behaving. What are your thoughts on where we go from here? I know it's super tough to say, and it's predictions are almost impossible to make, but kind of a gut feeling, I guess.
It's kind of tough for me to actually give like a definitive where I think we're going to go. I think it depends on a lot of factors, and I know this kind of seems like a cop-out answer, but at the end of the day, like I don't know if I have a good answer, to that question. Like if I see a good technical setup, like I'll definitely tweet about it. But I think definitely like taking a stance on where the market is as a whole, like right now, I don't know if I can, I don't know. Yeah. I'm
It's not a
invested
cop-out 'cause,
personally, but like
that's a smart answer.
It's tricky,
It's
right?
an informed
now,
answer. You know, it's like people want like a definitive, like this is the start of alt season. It's going to last 5 months, and then we're going to crash 30%, and then we're going to go flat for a year, and then we're going to have another alt season. It's like people want that, but that's completely unrealistic. I mean, if you look at any kind of market with any kind of asset pricing involved, it's impossible to predict in the short term. It's really hard to predict in the medium term, and it's a little bit easier to predict in the long term, but people want certainty. They want overconfidence, you know?
One of my favorite things I'll see on crypto Twitter is you'll see the Twitter heroes. They'll go out and they'll say, if you're saying it could go up or it could go down, you're an idiot and you're not a trader. You have to make one call. And it's like, I don't know if I actually really believe in that. And I don't agree with it at all because, you know, in any case, it can go up or it can go down. You know, it's like, but these guys are like, no, you need to call one direction and that's it. It's like, well, you know, I survive by having a flexible bias. You know, it's like I might pick one way, but I'm still, you know, aware that it can go down and I'm just trying to ride the wave.
Yeah. And I mean, no one's a prophet out there. Like if someone's billing themselves as a prophet, like they're selling snake oil. I mean, there's definitely good traders out there, but like, not to say that, but like anyone who's really, anyone who says they have all the answers is just no.
They're full of shit. Yeah. Start counter. That's
So Ethan, where do you see maybe, you know, longer term, where do you see this market going? I mean, what's your, you know, let's give maybe a realistic thought on where you think, say in another 5, you know, in 2022, we're all sitting here on the nationally televised Crypto Street Podcast TV show, and you're the guest. Where will we be? What are you thinking?
I mean, by that time, Bitcoin's probably going to have another run. I mean, $20,000 is probably not the long-term peak, unless it gets sidelined by another like cryptocurrency, like a full cryptocurrency, not a token. But I think, I mean, Bitcoin has the network effect. Network effect is extremely powerful, especially when you're trying to build something, you know, as large of a concept as currency. The network effect is everything. And Bitcoin was the first. Bitcoin has like the most talented developer team. It's got a lot of things going for it. And I think, you know, block size debate notwithstanding, I think even considering the block size debate, you know, you have the Lightning Network coming into effect. You know, SegWit and transaction batching are starting to, you know, lower fees across within the market. But I think the future for Bitcoin and the future for cryptocurrencies in general is pretty bright. I think, not to say that I'm bullish on every project out there. Like I took sort of a hit on a lot of tokens earlier. I think the vast majority of tokens are going to sort of fail or implode as either developers sort of quit, or, you know, the idea just sort of proves to be inviable or inefficient. But I think in terms of actual currency usage, I think the future looks bright for cryptocurrencies. I'm not sure if it's going to be used, you know, within 5 years, but I think maybe 20, 30 years down the line, you know, once I would say more of the world has internet, once people are more familiar or comfortable using Bitcoin, once like the actual like UI is there, once like the, you know, user interact, like once it's more user friendly, I'd say for like a general audience, like the non-tech audience, I think, you know, we're going to see it explode.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that moment where we start getting a better idea on how to evaluate these projects, because, you know, it's still something that I don't really think anyone has a good idea at how to do in this market. And I think that's why we see a lot of professional, you know, guys from Wall Street or something saying they just, you know, it's a scam or they don't understand it.
Right.
And it's because they have no idea how to evaluate this stuff. And that's kind of one thing I'm really looking forward to. And we're seeing some guys who are trying to, you know, create some things where they can evaluate, you know, projects, but there isn't really anything legit yet. And to me, this is going to be a really neat area because there's nothing to compare this stuff to. So it's like, how do we even know it's overvalued necessarily, right? Like we just don't know. And so that's one thing in the future I'm kind of looking forward to, is getting better ideas on how to evaluate these projects.
I think that's spot on. I think, you know, as like the economists sort of start to take more interest in the space, I think you are going to see a lot more like emphasis placed on sort of fundamental valuation, you know, in the sense that you can value, let's say, a company or a stock based on, you know, its company's like cash flow and projecting it in the future. You can evaluate a bond based on discounting like the bond's cash flow. You can value loosely a currency based on the collective economic activity for a given country. But for cryptocurrency, it's harder because you're building a currency from the ground up, and especially with Bitcoin and any cryptocurrency right now, I'd say mainstream usage, at least for like monetary purposes, is fairly low right now.
Yeah.
So there's not a whole lot to actually sort of value it on. It's sort of like Tesla in the sense that it's all about what you think is going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
I think Chris Bernisky has done some of the best work in terms of creating a framework for valuing cryptocurrencies. It's imperfect, but I mean, that's to be expected. These things are going to get refined. Cryptocurrency is so new that, for somebody to have like an exact thing that replicates, say, a PE ratio in stocks is a little bit unrealistic now. But yeah, I think that's going to be super important, especially like you guys were saying, towards getting mainstream adoption, or at least kind of main institutional adoption of these things. Because these guys think within the parameters of what they're used to, which is fixed income, equities, stocks, bonds, yada, yada.
There's like a lot of guys out there trading not off of charts. They're trading off of fundamental analysis, right? On valuations. So, I think that'll be a big thing, really, even progressing this market.
Yeah.
And that's definitely like what institutions focus on too. I think there's definitely less emphasis placed on technical analysis outside like the Twitter community or like the cryptocurrency sort of trading sphere. I think most of the larger institutions, they want to have something more tangible to sort of base their investment decisions off of.
Yeah.
So they're looking at the fundamentals. They're not necessarily looking at a chart or like what the technicals say. If it's like a support resistance level, they're looking at let's say this company's cash flows or like how are their business operations. So I think you're definitely right. Like as the fundamental, as the valuation methods sort of get discovered, I think you're going to see institutions being a little bit more comfortable stepping in. Once the economists and like more mainstream analysts step in, you're going to see the institutions be more comfortable with it.
Yeah, for sure. And like you touched on before, how when you were starting, like a $20,000 Bitcoin price seemed kind of crazy, or you never thought you would see that. And I think we're going to see valuations of Bitcoin that have the same thing in hindsight, where we're going to fast forward 4 years and go, oh my God, I didn't think Bitcoin would ever hit 100,000 or something like that. And I mean, we're just kind of throwing numbers out there, granted, but I think it can go a lot higher than we think. Just because it has always done that in the past. I'm sure when it started, I wasn't around back then, but I'm sure the thought of $1,000 Bitcoin seemed absolutely absurd at some point in time. And now that seems like the very low end of what it might end up at, even in a really bearish, bad market.
Parity with gold was the big hype. I remember that.
Yeah,
that was hype. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
then now look at where we are. It's like that's just a distant memory. It's just nuts to think about.
Well, did you guys see Tom Lee was saying he has like a $10 million target on it within like, I don't know how many years. I think it might have been like 12 years or something, but he was predicting, granted, for people who don't know, Tom Lee comes from the world of traditional finance, and he is like the most uber bull on everything of all time. So like when he was in stocks, like he was always extremely bullish on stocks. And like you look at his S&P targets, they're always like really high. And this is not to say he's not smart, because he's been.
You gotta say, like,
he's not wrong either.
Yeah.
I mean, markets
traditionally markets only go up. Traditionally, so.
Yeah. Well, he's been pretty spot on. So it might seem a little bit crazy, and he is an uber bull, but he might be right. So who knows?
Yeah,
let's hope.
I was glancing over this paper the other day. I think Bloomberg shared it, where some economists tried to actually derive like a fundamental fair value for Bitcoin, and they used like to calculate like the supply. They calculated like mining costs, and to calculate demand, they calculated like network usage. And like that's sort of something that I've actually sort of like by myself have been sort of looking at, for a little while, especially like last summer. I started reading David Ricardo's, I forgot the name of the book, but it's like his headline work. And his labor theory of value is like the very first chapter in there. And it's basically that the value of any commodity is basically how much it costs for someone else to produce it. So like how much labor is required essentially to produce it. And I think that's really applicable to Bitcoin. But sort of a counter to that, with mining difficulty adjustments, I'd say it's a pretty elastic market, and it's kind of hard to like actually look at like something like mining costs and like try and use that to predict where Bitcoin's going in the future, because that actually responds to price movements. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's way more dynamic in a lot of ways, and also kind of fixed in some ways too. It's very complex, I think, which we're all kind of learning these things as we go along.
Very true.
I think we're at like a kind of an interesting stage in the market. I just wanted to make this comment where I think, I don't know if we're like in alt season, but I will say one thing. Like Prince and I were talking about this before the podcast started, where there are some points in the market where good news, any tidbit of good news about any coin is enough to send it up 30% that day or 50% that day. And I feel like the market lately has really been the sort of market where, good news is coming out for a lot of projects, but it has no effect. So I think in the same sense that markets get ahead of themselves or prices get ahead of themselves, we're sort of at a period now where everything is normalizing a little bit, where good news is sort of just getting absorbed in the price and not really reflecting these gigantic parabolic runs that we used to see a year ago. And I think it's just kind of interesting to see, the ebb and the flow of the markets. And I really think, we're at that stage where the news is kind of catching up to the prices. The prices are sort of stagnant or maybe a little bit down. But these are natural, and this is kind of what happens in every market. Valuations get a little bit nutty, and then, good news gets absorbed, and then prices kind of normalize and equalize with the news and the fundamentals. And then, once that kind of stabilizes for a while, then you can start to churn higher again. And I personally, I think perhaps we are kind of on the cusp of a new alt season. I mean, though honestly, I've kind of changed my opinion of that just in the half hour before we started this podcast with this Bitcoin dump. So I don't know. What do you think, Dale?
I don't know. I don't know if it's the, just me not wanting to hope it's here and then it's not here. I just feel it in the market. I mean, some of these charts just look ready to go. I think a lot of alts are bottomed out. I think it's fucking time. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Ethan, let's talk about, in the crypto Twitter, everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, most people hide behind a cartoon character or a pimpin' movie star like myself. Maybe let's talk about why you felt the need to quote unquote dox yourself and be known as Ethan Ackerman instead of Crypto Ethan.
I think, and I definitely, before I say anything, I definitely want to say that this is just for me. I mean, if you choose to, use or stay anonymous, I guess as you said, hide behind like an avatar or something, that's totally fine. Everyone's in a different situation, different predicaments, and it's completely like understandable for a lot of people, who want to stay anonymous in the space. However, I think for me, I mean, I had been Ethan or at Crypto Ethan for a long time. My profile picture for several years was Kanye West, actually. Just good memories. But I'm not entirely sure what really motivated me to just be more public with my identity. I guess it probably started when I was on what was it? Block Talk back in like 2015. That was like the first real time I actually, showed my face or, was sort of public with, who I am, like, behind just like me online or at Crypto Ethan, who was really behind Crypto Ethan. And I think that was a pretty positive experience. It was actually nice interacting with people, like real people on a face-to-face basis. As time has gone on from that, and, as like Twitter and cryptocurrency has sort of stayed and remained as a big part of my life, I think I sort of I felt comfortable at least being a little more open with, who I am. And I mean, I still sort of keep it a little bit limited. Not really. I mean, my name, what school I go to. I'm from Southern California originally, like, all that. But I think I felt comfortable just, actually making more like a human connection with the people that I met online rather than just sort of knowing them as these, avatars that were like trading or whatever. I sort of decided to, go public with who I am. I figured it would probably help also build credibility, once I started applying for like, let's say jobs. And I figured it was something that I wanted to do.
There's definitely like a credibility aspect, and I think there's a relatability aspect as well, where people can kind of, make their own image of you when you don't really have an actual image. But when you actually put your face out there, people like people that they can relate to, whether that be personality, looks, whatever, it comes in many forms. And so I've kind of, we've all kind of struggled with this, I think, oftentimes in our own heads. the whole doxing issue versus staying anonymous, and I think we all have our reasons for wanting to do it and not do it. But it's interesting to see you do it, especially at a young age, and so it's pretty cool to see, and I think a lot of people have experienced a lot of success doing it because it does kind of give you that extra oomph of legitimacy, credibility, and that sort of stuff. So I'd say kudos to you for doing that. It's
definitely.
especially in crypto where you got to be worried about all these crazy people like trying to scam you and all these weirdos and all that. So
yeah. I mean, I try not to pick fights on Twitter. I try and just be, civil. I post my thoughts. I don't try and sell snake oil. I mean, I just try and be, real with, who I am, what I'm thinking. I take it from more of like an academic perspective. I try not to make a whole lot of like enemies. But I think what you said about sort of bringing legitimacy to the space is really, that's also a sort of a big reason why I did it. I know, especially in the run up in 2017, a lot more people went public with, their real identity. I know, Josh or Carp Noctum, you guys had him on, I think about a week ago or so. He, I believe, went public like with his identity last year. I know he'd been doing YouTube for a while, but he changed his Twitter name, his pictures, so on and so forth. And I think it's definitely something that helps bring legitimacy to the space because it's a lot easier to scam people or build people out of their money when you're just an avatar online. But I think it's definitely harder to get away with that, if you're public with who you are.
I think it's kind of funny too to have your own perception of how these people look behind their avatars, and then when you finally see them, you're just like, "What? That is not how I pictured you looking." I know. Des and I were talking one time, and she thinks I have a neck beard, which I do not.
Well, it's sort of like when you read a book and you create an image of a character in your head. Like for me, it was like Harry Potter in a sense, where like I had what I thought all these people looked like. I was a gigantic Harry Potter nerd back in the day. Well, not a big time nerd, but I love the books. I ate them up every time the new one would come out. And then the movies come out, and you're like, oh, I like my version of that character better. So I think that's like one thing kind of wary of is like, you can kind of be as cool or not cool as people imagine you to be if you're not actually out there, and you kind of let people's imaginations go crazy. So I think there is like a certain mysticism lost when you dox because it's way more human, and even though it's relatable, it's also less mysterious, which is a little bit less cool, I think, in some ways. So it's kind of a balance, I believe.
Yeah, you can still be a cool person when you dox yourself, but
true. Good point.
Yeah, I think my biggest concern with it is just the security aspect. I mean, and some other things I guess I don't want to. Yeah, and some other things I'd rather not say, but I don't want people to realize I'm actually empty beer bottles.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Like everyone, I'm not trying to in any way sort of at all bash people who, stay anonymous or prefer to sort of conceal their identity. Everyone's in a different situation. I think, like you said, Dale, like it's really about like your own personal comfort level.
Yeah, and either way, it's whatever you're comfortable with. So just don't if you're thinking about it, my only suggestion is make sure all your ducks are in a row. And if that's something you want to do, do it. And if you don't. That's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So, you guys got anything else for Ethan? Ethan, you got any final thoughts before we wrap up here?
I think we had a good chat. I think thanks again for having me on. This was really good.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, no, this was fantastic.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for your insight. Young, very sharp kid. Keep at it. I think you've got a bright future in the space, Ethan.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for being on. Check him out on Twitter, Crypto Ethan. Take care. Thanks for listening. Tip your damn waitress. Peace out.